My name is Rachel, and while I was deployed overseas, my husband filed for divorce without a whisper. But that wasn't the worst of it. He drained our savings, forged my signature, and moved someone else into our home with my dog. Ever feel like your life was rewritten behind your back? Stick around, because what I uncovered next will make you question who you really trust. Before we dive in, what time are you reading this and where from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know. It had been pouring all day in Bucharest, the kind of chilly drizzle that seeps through your sleeves and clings to your skin. After a 14-hour shift in the NATO contractor bunker, I trudged back to my apartment, boots soaked, shoulders tense, and head throbbing. I didn't notice how quiet the city had become until I stepped into my building. No sirens, no chatter in the stairwell, just the low hum of hallway lights and the slap of wet soles on tile. Inside my flat, everything was still. I peeled off my jacket, hung it by the door, and dropped my bag onto the couch. I reached for the kettle, ready to lose myself in chamomile steam and silence. That's when my phone buzzed. One new email, subject: "Let's be mature about this." It was from Daniel, my husband. No, my soon-to-be ex-husband, apparently. I opened it without hesitation, expecting a grocery list or some forwarded meme. Instead, it read, "Rachel, I've filed for divorce. I've cleared our joint account. The house is handled. Let's be mature about this." PDF was attached. I stood there, blinking at the screen. My eyes didn't move. I read those 4 lines over and over. No apology, no explanation, not even a damn take care. My fingers hovered over the reply button, but I didn't respond. What could I say? The silence filled the kitchen like floodwater, pressing against my ribs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I turned off the stove, walked to the bathroom, and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. Later, I crawled into bed fully clothed, damp hair soaking the pillow. I stared at the ceiling fan, blinking in sync with its lazy spin. Not a single tear. I was hollowed out. The next morning, I opened my laptop. My hand trembled slightly as I logged into our joint bank account. I wasn't sure what I expected, maybe a few hundred left out of courtesy. The balance, 31 cents, felt like a punch. My breath caught mid-chest. I checked the transaction history. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but no. He'd started siphoning money weeks ago. Small amounts at first, $120 here, $300 there, then $5,200, $12,000. Just days before I left for Romania, he transferred $40,000 to another bank. He'd planned this. The betrayal wasn't impulsive, it was deliberate. I scrolled through the records, watching our life drain away, line by digital line. He didn't even wait until I was gone. He started bleeding us dry while I was still kissing him goodbye at the airport. I closed the laptop, my stomach churning. Then it hit me. The last time I saw him, he'd smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "Stay safe, okay?" He even asked if I'd packed my allergy meds. What kind of man says that while betraying you? Daniel always had a knack for sounding genuine. He could lie while looking you dead in the eye, hand on your shoulder. Maybe that's why people liked him. I used to like him too. God help me, I loved him. But now I was staring at a stranger's fingerprints all over my finances and my future. I shoved my phone into my pocket and grabbed my coat. The cold air stung as I stepped outside. It was still drizzling, but I walked without an umbrella, letting the water soak my collar. I didn't care. I needed air. I needed to think, and more than that, I needed answers. Daniel thought he'd silenced me with a PDF. He didn't realize I wasn't the kind of woman who begged. As I wandered the cobbled streets, passing coffee shops and shuttered kiosks, I started making a mental list, not of regrets or lost time, but of everything he didn't know I knew. The passwords he forgot I had. The documents he assumed I'd deleted. The contacts I'd made when we bought the house, legal, financial, private. If he thought I'd just sign his papers, he didn't know me at all. By the time I returned to my apartment, my boots were heavier, my mind clearer. My grief had quieted, replaced by something sharper. Focus. The game had begun, and I wasn't the pawn he left behind. The next night, after hours of pacing and combing through our drained bank records, I found myself staring at my phone, fingers hovering over the home security app. I didn't know why I opened it. Maybe I wanted proof the house was empty, silent, like the future Daniel handed me without a word. Or maybe some part of me sensed there'd be more. The screen loaded slowly on the hotel Wi-Fi. I tapped into the camera feed labeled kitchen entry. At first, it was just the usual grainy view. Dark counters, fridge hum, nothing unusual. Then movement. A man walked into frame, barefoot, posture relaxed like he owned the place. He stretched, yawned, and reached for a coffee mug. The best wife ever won. Daniel gave me our second Christmas, the one he said matched my wit. The man wasn't Daniel. He was younger, maybe mid-20s, lean, with that smug, barefoot-in someone else house confidence I hadn't seen in years. He looked around like he was planning breakfast. Scout, my dog, sat beside him, tail wagging. I blinked. My hand shot to my mouth. He squatted to scratch behind her ears like it was routine. She looked content, familiar. Then came the blow I didn't expect. He was wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt, the one I slept in when Daniel was deployed. The sleeves were too long on him, but he didn't care. I tapped into the camera archive and rewound a few hours. There, in the driveway, Daniel's car was parked, door wide open. The stranger stepped out from the passenger side. Daniel leaned in, kissed him hard, then handed him the house key. And just like that, the footage became unbearable. He hadn't just replaced me, he was replacing me. The space I designed, the dog I raised, the life I tried to build while he scripted his exit. All of it repurposed like I'd never existed. I paused the footage and stared at the still frame. I wasn't crying, I was too stunned. My mouth was dry, my throat scratched with something I couldn't name. Then I remembered a conversation a month before I left for Romania. We were eating takeout on the couch, pad thai, his favorite, and Daniel mentioned maybe building that deck in the backyard. Said he'd been talking to a contractor. Refinance, he added casually. Maybe update the kitchen, too. Could raise the value if we ever move. I nodded, exhausted, distracted, trusting. That's when he pulled out paperwork, just to get the process started. He said. I barely skimmed it, just saw our names on top. My signature was likely just printed. His plan, whatever it was, had been in motion long before I boarded the plane. I felt nauseous. I saved the footage to my encrypted drive, adding it to a folder I named Daniel's Betrayal. Then I drafted an email to Michael Reed, a litigation lawyer in Austin and my old law school classmate. Daniel didn't know I still talked to Michael. Subject line: urgent, confidential. I didn't include a message, the footage would speak for itself. Before sending, I watched one more clip. The stranger, now shirtless, poured another cup of coffee. Behind him, a frame sat on the kitchen shelf. A picture of Daniel and me from our 5th anniversary in Seattle. The man picked it up, stared at it, then tossed it face down on the counter. I don't know what burned hotter: anger, humiliation, or the clarity that Daniel never planned to keep anything sacred. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the stiff hotel mattress, watching the ceiling fan's slow spin, and made a promise to myself. This wouldn't end with an email. Daniel thought this was about marriage. He had no idea he'd just started a war. I stayed up until sunrise, watching clips of my house like a stranger peering into someone else's life. It was surreal, like I'd slipped into an alternate timeline where I didn't exist. But Daniel hadn't just built a new life while I was gone. He'd crafted a narrative. The morning after I sent Michael the footage, I opened Facebook out of habit, half expecting something trivial. Instead, I was tagged in a neighbor's post, a backyard barbecue photo. Burgers sizzling, red Solo cups, lawn chairs, laughter. In the corner was Daniel, standing like nothing in his world was shattered. The caption read, "Proud of how resilient Daniel is after everything he's been through. Strength looks good on you, brother." Comments flooded in. "So sorry she did that to you. Some women don't value loyalty. You're better off now." Bile rose in my throat. I clicked on Daniel's profile. He hadn't blocked me, just acted like I didn't exist. His posts were full of smiling group shots, brunches, and quotes like, "Sometimes letting go is the best self-care." He was selling grief he didn't earn. I scrolled, my chest tightening with every photo. There was Scout playing fetch in the park, captioned, "My rock during the worst year of my life." I nearly dropped my phone. He was rewriting everything, telling our community I'd abandoned him, chosen my career over family, that he tried to save our marriage, but I'd turned distant. One comment from a woman I used to babysit for read, "It's always the strong, silent ones who suffer most." Suffer? He emptied our accounts, forged my name, moved his boyfriend into our home, and I was the villain in the soap opera. I clicked into a neighborhood group thread. They were discussing me like I'd vanished mid-sentence. One message stood out. She ran off with some guy in Europe. Heard she barely called home. Daniel was devastated. Asterisk devastated. Asterisk that man didn't cry when I left. He didn't beg me to stay. He gave me a hug like it was a formality. That wasn't heartbreak. That was closure, signed and sealed before I boarded the flight. I remembered a voicemail from him 2 months ago. 23 seconds. Hey babe. Hope you're good. Everything's fine here. Scout misses you. I'll call later. He never did. Now I knew why. What stung most wasn't the lies. It was how easily people believed them. Friends I'd known for years. Neighbors who waved at me every morning for a decade. People who'd shared our dinner table. They swallowed his story without question. One comment hit like a gut punch. At least he still has Scout. That dog's been through enough. Scout, the dog I rescued after my father died. The one who slept on my chest the night I broke down from grief. Daniel didn't even want a dog. Said, what's the point if it can't talk back? But now Scout was part of his pity campaign. Another piece of my life folded into his narrative like I was a draft he erased. I whispered aloud, he even stole my dog. That's when something in me shifted. Not a switch, but a fuse, quiet, hot, steady. I opened a blank document and typed in bold, Daniel Carter's fabricated narrative. Below, I listed everything he claimed versus what happened. She abandoned me. I deployed to Romania under contract. She made me refinance the house. He suggested it and forged my approval. She never called. I have call logs and unanswered messages. Line by line, I mapped the web he'd spun. Not for revenge. Not yet. But because the truth was a lifeline, and I was climbing it hand over hand until I stood above every lie he told. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't comment on the threads. I got quiet. Daniel built his story on sympathy and whispers. But I knew something he didn't. Lies are soft. They comfort people. But truth has weight. And weight sinks. By the end of the week, I'd collected enough lies to start a fire. But I needed proof, something undeniable, not just my word against his. I didn't want to expose Daniel. I wanted to trap him, document by document. So I called the bank. The woman on the phone was polite, almost chipper. She had no idea her routine verification was unraveling my marriage. I requested all refinance paperwork with my name, initials, or signature. She said it'd take a day or two. Took 42 hours. The PDF arrived. Subject, requested documents Carter mortgage. I opened it, and there it was, my name at the top of page 1 under signatory, Rachel M. Carter. The signature looked fine at first. Familiar strokes, proper slant. But then I noticed it. The middle initial was wrong. I always sign Rachel M. Carter. This had a clean, looping L, and the tail of the G in Carter curved too sharp, too deliberate. Mine flicks upward, like a hesitation. This was firm, practiced. I pulled my passport from the drawer, set it beside the screen, and compared them. They weren't the same. It wasn't a mistake, it was forgery. The next morning, I FaceTimed Michael. He answered from a cluttered conference room, coffee in hand, tie loose like he'd been up all night. I held the phone to the screen. This is forgery, right? He didn't hesitate. Absolutely. And based on the details, it looks like the refinance pulled nearly $330,000 in equity. My breath caught. From the house. Yeah. And with your name on the original mortgage, that money was taken from your asset without your consent. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He didn't just fake my name, I whispered. He stole my inheritance. There was a long pause before Michael asked, want me to dig deeper on the loan officer who approved this? I nodded, ended the call, and my mind drifted to a different living room. Smaller, cluttered, smelling of chili and lemon polish. My father's living room. 6 years ago, I sat on his couch the day after his funeral, Scout curled at my feet, the wall clock ticking above the mantel. His will was simple, a letter and a modest inheritance. Enough to start over, he'd written, to build something yours. That money became the foundation for the Austin house. Every square foot of drywall, every brushed nickel fixture, I chose them. Daniel didn't care, just said, whatever makes you happy. Now he'd turned it into a paycheck I never approved. The violation wasn't just about money. It was what that house meant. He didn't just betray me. He dismantled what my father left behind. I stood, chest tight, and grabbed the folders from my suitcase. I hadn't touched them since arriving in Bucharest. They held the house deed, original loan approval, even the 2019 inspection report. I scanned each, encrypted the files, and uploaded them to my secure cloud. Then I opened a new folder, counterclaim prep. I drafted an email to Michael, attaching a side-by-side image of the forged signature and my passport. No commentary, the contrast was clear. Then I started a new document, timeline of deception. Daniel Carter. Every date, every false promise, every transaction, every clue I ignored because I trusted the man I married. My hands didn't shake. No tears, no shaky breaths, just steady keystrokes. Felt like building again, not drywall or tile, but truth. And truth wasn't fragile. It couldn't be sold, silenced, or signed away. The cab dropped me 3 blocks from the motel just after midnight. No fanfare, no headlights in the driveway. I carried a suitcase, a backpack, and a list of names that had gone from familiar to dangerous in 3 months. I didn't text Daniel or call anyone. I moved like a ghost in the town I once called home. The motel clerk didn't ask questions when I signed in as Lena Brooks with a fake out-of-state ID Michael had prepared. I paid cash. He handed me a key card for room 117 with the indifference of someone who'd spent years behind bulletproof glass. The bed creaked. The air smelled of bleach and damp carpet. Perfect. I didn't unpack. I opened my laptop and pulled up counterclaim prep. Then I opened Michael's second folder, unauthorized real estate transactions. At the top was my house, listed 2 weeks ago. The agent, Thomas Riley, priced it below market with a note. Seller motivated, ready for quick close. A scanned contract had my name and a signature that looked like mine, but the notary stamp was from a county I'd never lived in. The witness, Jenna Barnett, had been fired from a title company 2 years ago for procedural dishonesty. This wasn't Daniel being careless, it was coordinated. I shut the laptop and rubbed my temples. The next morning, I met Michael in person for the first time in 7 years at a diner 20 miles outside Austin, tucked behind a gas station with 1992 signage. The waitress poured coffee without asking, calling everyone hun. Michael was already seated, folders stacked, legal pad open. "You look different," he said, eyeing me over his glasses. "Whar'll do that," I replied. He slid a folder over. "The signature doesn't match your original mortgage documents. We've got grounds for a civil claim, maybe criminal fraud, depending on how deep this goes." I flipped through the pages, then stopped. A second document. A contract between Daniel and Thomas, not as seller and agent, but as business partners in a new LLC. Their names were side by side, managing partners. The LLC's address? My house. "He used my address for a shell company?" I asked. Michael nodded, and funneled the refinance funds into it. "There's a trail, but it's messy." I closed the folder and pushed my coffee aside. "I want to see the house." "You sure?" "I need to." He handed me his rental car keys. "Don't park in front. Be smart." The drive was quiet, familiar streets blurring past like ghosts. I parked halfway down the block and killed the engine. The house looked unchanged. Blue shutters, white trim, crooked mailbox. But the porch lights were on, curtains drawn, a shadow moving inside. Thomas's car was in the driveway where mine used to be. The audacity twisted my stomach. He wasn't just living in my house, he was living like he built it. I watched for 20 minutes. Nothing happened. Just the glow of lights, a TV flickering behind blinds, and Scout's faint silhouette at the window. She tilted her head toward the street, like she sensed me. I almost opened the door, almost called her name, but I didn't. Instead, I typed on my phone. "You have 24 hours to undo this before I make it your worst mistake." I stared at the words, then deleted them. No warnings. They deserved consequences, not chances. I started the engine and drove away. I was in Michael's rental, engine off, parked 3 houses down from what used to be mine, when the black SUV rolled up without headlights. 2 more followed, unmarked, government plates, low profile. The agents moved silently, coordinated. I didn't breathe. From behind tinted glass, I watched them split. 2 to the porch, 1 to the garage. Then the knock, 3 firm raps, and a badge held high. Daniel always said, "Nobody knocks unless they want something." He was right. This time, it wasn't me they wanted. 3 months ago, I was neck deep in NATO cybersecurity meetings, trying to build something bigger than myself. Daniel knew my schedule to the hour when I'd be flying, off-grid, consumed by work. That's when he moved. Now, I was watching him pay the price for thinking I'd stay quiet. The front door opened slowly, a sliver of light cutting across the porch. Thomas appeared first, barefoot, shirt wrinkled, hair messy. He looked confused, half asleep, maybe thinking it was a neighbor, until Agent Parker stepped forward and spoke. He tried to shut the door. They didn't let him. I'd met Parker once, on a secure video call from her DC office. Her tone was professional, but her eyes burned. She didn't entertain drama. She wanted facts, paper trails, custody chains. I'd given her everything. Falsified refinance documents, signature comparisons, camera footage, metadata, timestamps, the whole network Daniel thought he'd buried. I even included a folder, anonymous source, internal bank activity. That source was Carmen Stokes, my sophomore year dorm mate. She went into banking. I went into policy. We lost touch until she saw my name on a flagged wire transfer from a liquidated equity draw. She reached out via encrypted email. Rachel, I can't sleep knowing what I know. Daniel hadn't just pulled cash from the house. He'd rerouted $120,000 into an LLC controlled by Derek Moore, a name new to me. Derek flipped distressed properties and had been fined twice for paperwork issues. Now he was in my living room, sipping coffee, watching crime shows, laundering stolen equity from a house built on my father's inheritance, until the FBI walked in. 10 minutes in, Derek was cuffed second. Daniel came last, trying to stay calm, gesturing, tossing out misunderstanding and technical error. Parker didn't flinch. Agent Donovan read him his rights while two others boxed up files and electronics. Daniel saw me as they loaded him into the car. I didn't wave or smirk. I raised my phone and recorded. 3 seconds, no commentary, just a timestamp, badge flashes, and a man in cuffs who thought he was untouchable. I forwarded it to Michael. Subject: Stage 1 complete. No celebration, no victory dance. Just silence and a shifting gravity. They underestimated me. That was their first mistake. Thinking I'd vanish was their last. By the time the courthouse clerk updated the case file with released on bond, I knew what was next. Daniel and Derek walked free within 48 hours. Predictable money, lawyers, connections. Justice was still a luxury. But then Thomas filed a motion from jail. Emotional distress, unlawful surveillance, digital defamation. I reread it 3 times. He was suing me from behind bars. A page from Daniel's playbook, victimhood cloaking strategy. They weren't fighting with facts but with smoke and mirrors. The next morning, Daniel's lawyer stood outside the Travis County Courthouse, smug, speaking into microphones. My client has endured months of harassment by a woman who clearly struggles with mental instability. Her accusations are unfounded, dangerously obsessive. I watched the clip on my phone, muted. Daniel stood in the background, arms folded, nodding like the betrayed one. Their war wasn't just legal, it was reputational. Whispers outshout truth, headlines thrive on drama, and the public loves a simple story, especially from a man who smiles well in a suit and says, "I just want to move on." That night, I met Michael at a quiet strip mall cafe on the east side. We ordered black coffee and sat with our backs to the wall. He slid a USB drive across the table. "Thomas Riley," he said. Or, as he used to be, TJ Walsh. My hand froze on the cup. He changed his name? Twice, Michael confirmed. 2 civil suits for fraud, Arizona, New Mexico. Both dropped when the women backed out. Same pattern. Target women in financial distress, cozy up, convince them to refinance or co-sign, list the home under the radar, disappear with the proceeds. A predator, not sloppy, calculated. And now he's hiding behind a distress claim, I muttered. Michael's face hardened. We'll dismantle it. That week, Parker shared new FBI forensic findings. Derek listed my home weeks before I returned to the U.S. The buyer? An LLC tied to Thomas's former partner in Flagstaff. Paperwork was 90% complete, needing only a digital signature. They'd set up a spoofed email in my name. If the system hadn't flagged the metadata, my house would have been sold legally under a false identity. They weren't just stealing homes, they were laundering them. The FBI caught it just in time. But predators fight dirty. That night, I returned to my motel room late, drained. The lock wasn't broken, nothing stolen, but I knew someone had been there. The air felt wrong, A window was slightly cracked. My papers were scattered on the bed, the folder court drafts open. I froze, then slowly closed the door and locked it. No message, no threat, just a quiet warning. We can reach you. I sat on the bed, staring at the mess. I didn't cry or call Michael. I gathered the pages, res-tacked them, zipped the folder back in my bag, and whispered, they should have finished the job, because now I was wide awake. I'd let Daniel smear me, Thomas stalk me, Derek use me. But I wasn't a target anymore. I was the last witness standing. The courtroom was cold, over-air-conditioned, designed to keep tempers cool. I sat at the witness stand in a navy blazer, no jewelry, hair pinned back, face bare. I wanted nothing to distract from my purpose. Tell the truth. Parker had warned me I'd be the anchor witness, the linchpin. I didn't flinch. I'd been their target. Now I was their undoing. Everything I'd built, surveillance footage, signature analysis, wire transfers, fake listings, was woven into a clear timeline, detailing not just what they did to me but to others. 5 women, 5 states, same pattern. Emotional leverage, forged signatures, quick sales, shell companies. Derek and Thomas had been at it since 2019. Thomas seduced, Derek laundered, Daniel gave them access. I handed the flash drive to the bailiff. As the screen lit up, I felt only calm. I first noticed inconsistencies in our bank account 2 months before deploying to Romania. I said, voice steady, each syllable shaped by restraint, not fear. As I walked the court through the documents, even the defense stopped objecting. What could they say? Their clients had signed everything. The lies were their own handwriting. When the video of Derek using my coffee mug played, a juror covered her mouth. I didn't look at Daniel until the recess. He approached me outside the courtroom. No cuffs yet, just a pale face and trembling fingers. Rachel, he started. I didn't move. Let him squirm. I didn't know how far it'd go. I didn't want to lose everything. Thomas said it was temporary. You weren't even here. I thought we'd work it out. He sounded like a kid caught stealing, not a man who stole a house and forged a life. Rachel, please, he murmured. I didn't mean for it to be like this. I tilted my head and spoke softly, for his ears only. I never left. His face crumpled, like the words stole his last breath. He never noticed me disappearing, not because I did, but because he stopped seeing me long before I packed a bag. The trial ended 2 days later. Thomas and Derek took plea deals. Federal conspiracy, identity theft, financial fraud. They'd serve time, not forever, but long enough for their careers and reputations to rot. Daniel didn't go to prison but signed over every asset. The house, his pension, every dollar he took. Full restitution. In return, federal charges were dropped. He'd never practice real estate again, never hold a license, never rebuild his good guy image. He tried to speak at the final hearing. I've made terrible mistakes, he told the judge. But I've learned. The judge stared for a long, empty second. You didn't learn, she said. You got caught. I didn't keep the house. Too many memories, too much betrayal soaked into the walls. But I kept the title because I earned it, and sometimes justice comes with receipts, not ribbons. I stood in the hallway, staring at the eggshell white walls Daniel chose. They still looked fresh, but they felt like someone else's. I ran my hand along the doorway one last time, stepped outside, and pulled it shut. That was the last time I saw the Austin house. I didn't need to sell it, but I did. Not for money, for energy, memory, closure. Some places witness your best days. Others survive your worst. I didn't want to live in ruins. Sold in 30 days, cash buyer, clean deal. I packed little. A few boxes, old notebooks, a photo of my father on the porch, smiling in his cowboy hat the day I got the keys. He never saw the house, but I think he'd be proud. Not of what I built, but of knowing when to let go. I bought a small cabin in Texas Hill Country, wrapped in oak trees and quiet. No smart thermostat, no doorbell camera, just a rusted mailbox, a wooden porch, and a star-filled sky that stole your breath. Scout settled in fast, sleeping at the foot of my bed like he never left. Sometimes he watched the woods, waiting for someone. But eventually he stopped expecting a knock. The past didn't vanish. It sat with me on the porch in quiet moments before sleep. But it no longer set the rhythm of my breath or the tightness in my chest. It was just something I'd survived. One rainy afternoon, I found an envelope in the mailbox, addressed by hand, no return address, North Carolina postmark. Inside, a folded sheet of lined paper and a note in neat blue ink. Asterisk, you don't know me, but the FBI said your case saved my home. I'm married to a Navy man. We almost signed the same papers. Thank you for being brave when disappearing would have been easier. Asterisk. I stood on the porch in slippers, rain splattering the steps, rereading the note. Something cracked open, not painfully but softly. I walked inside, stuck it on the fridge with a cowboy boot magnet, and stood there. I hadn't saved the world, but I'd saved someone's. That was enough. I don't track Daniel anymore. Last I heard, he moved to Lake Charles, Louisiana, back to his mother's house. No job, no license, no partner. His name appeared in an article once. The comments were brutal. I didn't relish it. I didn't feel anything. The law didn't cage him, but life did. Thomas and Derek are serving time. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy across state lines, maybe more if the FBI digs deeper. I didn't testify for vengeance, but to break the chain that let them keep going. Now there's no Daniel, no scandal, no storyline to defend. Just me, Scout, a barn full of reclaimed wood, and a calendar that's not full but not empty. I spend most days in the shop behind my cabin, working on custom furniture orders, sanding, measuring, building. It's work that demands your hands more than your mind. Exactly what I need. I sell through a small website Michael set up, undermade by Hill Country, Texas. The woman I was, explaining her worth through loyalty, rings, shared mortgages. She's still in there. Sometimes I miss her. But the woman who took her place knows her value and won't let anyone price it again. They took my house. They tried to take my name. But they'll never take what I rebuilt on my terms. The greatest battles aren't always in courtrooms or confrontations, but in choosing not to let betrayal define you. Rachel's story reminds us that even when everything's taken, you decide who you become next. Have you ever rebuilt your life after a trusted person broke it? Share your thoughts in the comments. If the story moved you, if you believe in justice, strength, or starting over, don't forget to subscribe. More true-to-life stories like this are coming your way.